It is time for us to jump over to our North America hub. Today, we actually have Cassandra Carmichael joining us for the report. She is the Executive Director of the National Religious Partnership for the Environment. Cassandra, welcome.
Good morning from Charlottesville, Virginia, and I'm very glad to be here to talk about the North American Hub's discussions that we had yesterday. We actually were concluding yesterday. We talked a lot at the beginning about challenges. So some of the challenges we talked about were how do we integrate sustainable development goals into the work of faith-based organizations? And in some cases, it was noted in the discussions that faith-based organizations are already working on sustainable development goals, except that they might not actually be aware of it. So there was a discrepancy in what folks are actually doing and how that is being communicated. So we talked a lot about that. Then we also talked about that the faith-based organizations need to assess what they can actually do, what resources they have, what extent can they actually work on sustainable development goals. So there needs to be an assessment and a further discussion. And then our conversation turned to science-based conversations and how do we ensure that our faith-based work is science-based. And there was a recognition that there's a broad spectrum of religious traditions and how they interact with science. And then the question came down to science can't be the motivation to do the work. Faith-based organizations can help with the motivation. And the question might actually be, what role can science play in a faith-based conversation around climate change, which I think is an interesting way to look at the question. The other challenge questions that we looked at were how can we integrate faith values into the work of multilateral organizations. And there was a very rich conversation about this and our interactions with multilateral organizations. But what in the notes of our various different breakout rooms, the one thing that was very interesting was that it was noted that faith-based work is not quantifiable, it's qualitative. It has to do with values of people and caring and heart, and that can't be reduced necessarily to information and discussions about profit. But we could, there was a recognition that faith-based organizations, we can raise the voice of our denominational resolutions and our education campaigns, and we can work with non-faith groups. They could be NGOs, environmental NGOs, for instance, and these connections can help empower complementary collaborations and a much stronger voice, not just from the faith community, but across the globe. After we took a look at challenges, which is always a good way to start out the morning, we switched over yesterday to looking at how can the faith community and faith-based organizations really make contributions to the Sustainable Development Goals. And it was noted in many of the conversations that faith-based organizations provide a rich array of resources and assets, if you want to term them that, but we have vast networks. But it's important to note that because faith identity is deeply held and deeply important to individuals, faith communities are in a position to really encourage and enforce values and behaviors for all their adherents. And in doing so, they can influence the wider community. It doesn't take a lot of people to make change in society, but we need from the faith community, I think the faith community needs to be much more visible and supportive of the Sustainable Development Goals, even if they are not actually articulated as Sustainable Development Goals within the faith community. The faith-based community has a deep understanding of the world, and that's what we really discussed, and the ability to call forth a commitment on the part of the people and caring for the people and caring for the planet. And we noted that if that commitment can be harnessed to support values, then it is all in working for the good. Faith-based organizations' missions, by their very nature, are holistic. their soul, their body, their mind. That's the mission of faith-based organizations. And there is in that an opportunity to really impact behavior and attitudes. And we noted, several of our discussion breakout rooms noted that there is a power in the pulpit and that can be utilized. And then finally, the question that we turned to last was, how do we integrate religious and spiritual values to ensure that there's an inclusive address towards sustainability, and that as we look towards green and transformative development, what kind of religious traditions or values can be integrated into that work? And again, we noted that the faith-based organizations, they're holistic. We do disaster relief, we do mission work, we feed the hungry, we clothe those that don't have clothes. So we noted that faith-based communities are already doing a lot that often isn't actually seen or appreciated, and that we are living examples, or we try to be living examples of the vision that we share of the world. Faith-based groups and the faithful need to be communities of this vision and the solidarity that we aspire to be. And we need to offer this to the world as a gift, offered with some urgency in the face of the destructive patterns of takers and exploiters. Faith communities need to bridge the gap between sustainable development goals and local communities and climate action, as most communities are not aware, as I noted earlier, that they're working towards sustainable development goals. There is a clear path. It was quite apparent there, and I can see the sun over my shoulder here coming in. There was a clear note throughout our conversations that there is a call to have faith-based organizations and faith included in United Nations platforms. And the faith community needs to not be just have a place at the table, but we need to have full participation at the table in order for us globally to work towards a more just and sustainable world. Thank you very much.